Rotarians. Mr. Ragavan Manian, our speaker today, is a versatile and gifted technology management music wizard. He has a degree in electrical engineering from IIT Madras, a master's in electrical engineering from the University of Virginia, and an MBA from the Indian School of Business, Hyderabad. He worked for 15 years with some of the hottest companies in the US, such as Marconi Communications, Cisco Systems, and Marvell Technology. He was concerned mainly with building, deploying, and troubleshooting network equipment. He returned to India in 2015. The same year, he and 3 partners launched an education startup based in Singapore. It helps develop activities and workshops to strengthen the creativity and imagination of every child. He is also into R&D on a better ecosystem for our planet. Today, Ragavan Manian pursues his pet passion, which is music. He is also into music of different kinds and genres: Carnatic, Hindustani classical, jazz, and blues. He has a special empathy for instruments. He is a guest lecturer in the design department of IIT Madras on the physics of musical instruments. He plays the flute, the violin, the saxophone, the bansuri, the harp, guitar, and saxophone. I'm getting breathless. Today, he will play the saxophone for us. Ragavan hails from a musical family. He was a disciple of one of the legends of Carnatic music, Dr. M. Balamurali Krishna, and learned from him for more than 10 years. He accompanied his Guruji in several of his concerts. He has featured in more than 500 concerts in India, the US, and the UK. He is a lyricist and composer. He has won several awards, such as the Balamurali Krishna Endowment Award this year, and prizes for vocal music at the Music Academy, the Krishna Gana Sabha, the Bharat Kalachar. Music and technology enrich each other today, and Ragavan Manian's career journey is a vivid example. He will speak to us today about his careers in engineering and music. Over to Ragavan Manian.
So anyway, I can raise this a little bit, maybe to the side, so that I don't have to constantly bend. Every bit helps. I think a few more of these diaries and we can get there.
That's right.
Yeah, you can do that. Okay, this looks good.
You need to turn down the top.
And this is better. Thank you, Mr. Sheshadri, for that introduction, and thanks Rotarians for having me here, Rotarians of South Chennai. My topic is going to be represented slightly differently from what a linear sort of progression would be. I went to college, I took a master's, I worked in industry, I produced some brilliant, I would say, networking equipment as in routers, wireless equipment, some patent technologies in the field of wireless communications. And then I did my MBA, I worked in a couple of startups. I was the vice president of operations at Shankar Mahadevan Academy, a music academy. And then I'm in Chennai now as one of the members of the founding team of a startup. That pretty much sums up my corporate journey. And a similar sort of left to right or chronological progression in music would be slightly more fuzzy, but essentially will comprise of began learning Carnatic music at the age of 6, found my way into the tutelage of Maestro Mangalampalli Balamurali Krishna at the age of 11, um, picked up, that momentum led me to several good concerts at some of the very prestigious venues in Chennai. Um, but you know, that story somewhere towards the mid-90s takes a tangential turn, because at that time I moved from Chennai to the US. I go there as a graduate student. I thoroughly enjoy the study. I miss home a lot. So I decided very early on that I will not be a citizen of any country other than India for something as sentimental as patriotism, which I still strongly believe in. And you know, but the convenience of being abroad, having a very, I would say, protected environment for research activity. At the same time, side by side, the patronage of the Indian diaspora wherever I went, whether it be the East Coast in Virginia, followed by in Pittsburgh, and then in the Bay Area, also a little sojourn in London. Wherever you go, there is a music-loving Indian. And of course, there are many technologists among us. So the journey was, although the musical journey took a side turn from the mainstream so-called Chennai circuit, it took me to places that I couldn't have otherwise musically imagined, such as exploring new genres and new instruments, or rather a whole plethora of instruments, and along the way meeting musicians from other parts of the world, other genres, other backgrounds, doing many jugalbandis, crossovers, fusions, concerts. And the long story short lands me back where it all began, in Chennai. And once again, I find myself in familiar yet changed circumstance. Familiar in the sense I'm back where my parents are, I'm here for my children grow up in their company and my wife's parents' company, which is all wonderful. But I'm slowly re-establishing ties with the musical community, which itself is another journey, which I think will take away much of my lifetime going forward. So the parallel tracks have moved to a point where, as Mr. Sheshadri and actually Mr. Madhu rightly observed, the passion slowly starting to take over more and more of my bandwidth. And as a way for me to reconcile what goes on in these two, parallel, sometimes competing, sometimes supporting each other tracks, I often resort to poetry and meditation. And what emerges from this meditative poetry or poetic meditation is what I plan to present to you in really 5 short presses of my thoughts as an amalgamation of my journey to where I am at this point. And I would like to follow each of my meditations with a short musical presentation. And I would like to imagine that there is a cohesive thread, and when I'm done and we open the floor for a conversation, I believe that we will have interesting nuggets to discuss. Let me commence with my first meditation. I call it converse or converse. The sense that conversing is to talk to each other, and the converse refers to a symmetry, a certain opposite of meaning or form or function. Language colors our world through shades of meaning. Symmetry yields fascinating results. Mara, Mara, backwards becomes Rama, Rama. Poetry, though a product of language, is only interested in beauty. A childhood bedtime story is told. A thief becomes a poet saint, and a timeless legend is born. My first musical presentation in the raga Simhendra Madhyam. Rama Rama Gunasima Rama Rama Gunasima Rama Hridaya Bhirama Sita Rama Rama Gunasima Rama Hridaya Bhirama Sita Rama Rama Gunasima Somadana Khana Shama Somadana Khana Shama Hema Barari Virama My next meditation is on sentiment. Engineering design is the reconciliation of opposites. In order to produce something materially useful, there is always constraints, and you have to work within those constraints. What is useful to you, though, may not serve my needs, and vice versa. Even engineers do impractical things, such as make music and feel patriotic and sentimental. Who's to decide what utility is? When there is nothing but wind. Nature. The bansuri was seeded by nature. Ban, the bamboo, is natural. Sur, the note, that too is in a way natural. Now a German named Boehm, he built a new kind of spring-loaded flute. We call it the orchestral flute. A Belgian by the name of Adolphe Sax went a step further. He created a hitherto unheard of instrument. It was in their nature, in the nature of Boehm and Sax, to engineer these marvels. And it is in my nature to marvel at these engineers.
What's that instrument called?
That's the Boehm flute. The flute that was designed by Mr. Boehm. It's also the orchestral or the Western flute simply. The next meditation is on dichotomy. Do dichotomies really exist? Or are they figments? Art versus science, abstract versus concrete, form versus function, music versus noise. It depends on two things in my opinion. The first is construct, how the story is worded, and context from whose point of view. Here's something from a young girl's context. And from this context, the construct may work. When a dog bites, when the bee stings, when I'm feeling sad, I simply remember my favorite things and then I don't feel so bad. But from the dog's context, the bite is debatable as feeling bad or feeling sad. And from the bee's context, the sting was certain death to the insect. That is dichotomy. Maybe there's no such thing. That leads to my next musical presentation. And finally I bring the sax out. My final meditation is on the imponderables. That's said to be a calm in the eye of every storm. If you peer closely at order, you will notice something of an uncertainty. Zoom into an atom. There's no way of telling what the electron is doing exactly. If you try and pin down the momentum, you will not be able to figure out its location. If you go for the location, then you will not be able to tell in what direction what the momentum of the electron is. Look into the eye of chaos. You might notice order. The swirling edges of the galaxy are kept in place by a singularity at near zero entropy, called the black hole. At its center, a black hole. These are the achintyas of life, the imponderables. They grip our soul. They make room for meditation. They spur the artist to greater creativity and imagination. And it is the same quest to ponder on the infinite, the imponderable, that creates art and creates engineering, creates the world that we live in. This is my final song. Sarvam Brahmamayam Re Re Sarvam Brahmamayam Sarvam Brahmamayam Re Re Sarvam Brahmamayam Sarvam Brahmamayam Kim Vachaniyam Kimavachaniyam Kim Rachaniyam Kimarachaniyam Sarvam Brahmamayam Re Re Sarvam Brahmamayam Kim Vachaniyam Kimavachaniyam Kim Bhajaniyam Kimavajaniyam Sarvam Brahmamayam Re Re Sarvam Brahmamayam Sarvatra Sada Hamsa Dhyanam Sarvatra Sada Hamsa Dhyanam Kartavyam Vo Mukti Nidanam Sarvam Brahmamayam Re Re Sarvam Brahmamayam Sarvam Brahmamayam 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 Thank you.
Yes. Would you like to ask your question, the quiz question for the...
Yes. Maybe a bit slightly technical on the musical side. But what was the raga of the last song I sang?
The answer should be what you have expressed.
I needed to have. Okay, then it makes actually it makes it easier. What is the raga of the piece I played on flute? On the flute, on the Bansuri, Indian flute. Not, yeah, who said that? Yeah, correct. It is Desh. Because the answer was there, I was talking about my country. Thank you.
there's a prize for the.
Oh,
Oh, this is
It's already given to you.
I'm glad.
Please
I'm
come.
glad I did not ask the quiz question before.
Don't tell me you've already given her the answer.
No, I haven't. She's my neighbor. I don't have to share this.
Which one?
Fair enough. Yeah. So all these.